What is up, everybody? Welcome back to everyone, and welcome back to myself to episode 102 of Bettin and Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Roscoe, coming to you after a week hiatus of being in the Caribbean. But welcome. I'm very excited to be back, of course, as we are covering a very good card for you guys here. It's a mandatory payout pick 5 with 2 grade 1s at Belmont at the Big A this Saturday, October 5th. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you guys all so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. And there is one announcement I want to make. I'll make it right now and also again while in the show while people are still coming in. But first, please go down below the video player. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out tremendously because not only does it show us that you guys are enjoying the content, but it also pushes this video and others on the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel out into the YouTube algorithm to hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. And of course, for that, we thank you. As you see, scroll on the bottom side of the screen, you'll see live shows. You'll see a new time slot in there, which is Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, of course, with our edition of Pacific Horse Players on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Bettin and Boozin has made the executive decision to move to Tuesday. That is Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, same time as always, but instead of having 2 shows for you guys to watch on Wednesday, I feel like it would be a little bit better if we kind of spaced them out a little bit more. So Bettin and Boozin will be your first handicapping show of the week, going Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern from next week and onwards, including for the Breeders' Cup season, which is going to be a fantastic week for all of us here on the HHH Racing Podcast. And we'll have you covered absolutely like a glove for all the Japanese invaders, all the Euros, everyone coming over. All those races are going to be covered here really well on the HHH Racing Podcast. But again, I'll mention that later in the show, but new Bettin and Boozin time going next week and onward, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So our new homes, please come join us on Tuesdays. But of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor is where you find every single episode in audio form, not only of Bettin and Boozin, but of every single episode posted to the HHH Racing Podcast YouTube channel. Again, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. And guys, if you guys didn't see last night's episode of Picks and Ponies, myself, Howard, and Paul covered the Fall Stars Saturday Keeneland card, one of my favorite cards of the entire year. I absolutely love Keeneland, as everyone knows who watches this show religiously. My favorite track to bet, my favorite track to visit. You guys missed out on Keeneland Power Picks, HHHRacingPodcast.com, though, for those. And, of course, for the normal Power Picks, Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast for those. Only $4 a weekend, and every single Saturday you get 2 full tracks, price plays, spot plays, pick 5 grids, everything you need to be successful on any given Saturday. The HHH Racing Podcast Power Picks have you covered. And again, only $4 a weekend, have been in the profit ever since February of 2021. Again, everything you need to be successful, we got you covered. Again, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. That link is, of course, in the description. As I mentioned, HHHRacingPodcast.com for previous editions of those Power Picks if you want to look at them before you buy them. Also, if you just want to learn more about the podcast, that is the best place to do so. A little bit of story time, then we'll get right into the show. Of course, for those that don't know or that have been following the podcast, I did get married on the 14th of September. We covered that in the 21st and the 100th episode of Bettin and Boozin, which was sandwiched in between my wedding day and my trip for the honeymoon. So I went on the honeymoon on a cruise from Port Canaveral. We're supposed to go to Cozumel, Mexico, and to Honduras. And with Hurricane Helene coming through, we actually diverted and we ended up going to the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, and St. Martin. Of course, a Dutch and French island in the Caribbean. It was an absolute blast. We had an absolute great time, Emma and I. Just really nice to get out and just finally relax, have a vacation where we relax. For those of you that follow me on X, we do a lot of Disney vacation and stuff like that where it's always go, go, go. Super nice to sit back and do nothing but drink all day, so was absolutely fantastic. And hopefully you guys enjoyed Howard and the guys, of course, last week covering Churchill Downs. Saw a lot of you watch that still. So thank you guys all for supporting the show, even when I am gone. Of course, we have two great handicappers also on the show, and then the addition of the boss, of course, never hurts. But thank you guys all for watching that show, and thank you for tuning in to this one. But guys, like I said, we'll get right into it here. This will be an hour max long show for you guys. Quick and easy, some really good races out here, but one big change, which I will get into before we get into this card. But first, let's bring on my co-hosts from the East Coast of New Jersey, Patrick Kunsel, and from The Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Boys, feels like the good old days. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah, no, it's good to have the, original OG group together again.
Of course, we miss Noah, but also, OG crew gets it done just fine. And that's an absolute disgusting footer, Charlie. We'll see how that ends up as the season goes along. I can't really say about too much, although I could say the Bears are going 15-2 because they're 2-2 also right now. So we'll say it, call it like it is. Of course, as we go through, we'll talk about more NFL as the show goes on. Who's in the chat, guys? Ryan Anderson's, of course, here, the Gallop Out. Let's go, man. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate. Katie says the Queen's MG. Go for Katie. Good luck, Katie, with that horse. You'll see my opinion as we go through. Terry Frank, good evening, my friend. Stephen Vanderbrook says, Kyle, how was the honeymoon? Kind of initiate a little bit of it, but Stephen was absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Colin Quinn says, flying to Keeneland tomorrow, but the best horse of the weekend I'm missing is in New York. Shit happens, but, man, you're watching a very, very good card this weekend. Unfortunately, you'll miss me and the rest of us by a weekend, but Howard, Noah, and the rest of those guys will be there. So hopefully you can at least find them out and hopefully get a beer from them through the weekend. But guys, let's get into it real quick right now. Like I said, we're covering the mandatory payout pick 5, which is in the middle. It's all stakes plus race 9. Races 5 through 9 is our sequence. And again, like I said, it's mandatory payout 50-cent wager. But guys, we'll get into it right now as race 5 starts off our sequence, as I mentioned. And as I bring up the Equibase in 1 second here, it's being annoying to me. It's the Jockey Club Derby Invitational, going 1 mile and 3/8 on the turf with a field of 7, but a pretty good field of 7 at that. As your morning line favorite is all the way to the outside, the Charlie Appleby runner, Legend of Time, with the magician Flavian Pratt taking the mount at 2-1. Carson's Run, a very talented runner for Christophe Clement. Dylan Davis takes up the mount at 5-2. Third choice, all the way almost to the outside, to number 6, El Razine. Irad takes up the mount for Pletcher at 7-2. And I'll bring up the picks right now. 2 of us are going with that last horse I mentioned, El Razine, which Patrick, very based, my friend. Charlie, you are going with the aforementioned Legend of Time, Flavian Pratt, Charlie Appleby. This is a horse that we all on this screen have trusted in the past, and just
you guys have chased this horse like crazy.
Yeah, and has been favored all 4 times. Only won once, and that was by a very slim margin. Charlie, you're trying to trust him again here, albeit should be a pretty easy trip, at least from what Timeform says in this race.
Yeah, I love that Pratt is, back aboard again. I thought the ride was honestly fine last time. I'm just kind of hoping with this one, A, that, he can put it all together. B, I will say, regardless of him getting the job done or not, pretty much in every race he ran in, except for his first in America, I would argue, like you were kind of hinting at, Kyle, it's a horse where he's very good at getting the right trip. And I don't know, to me personally, I also just visually a little bit more. I know this was his buy or top, but for me, I visually liked what I saw from him a little bit more on the firmer turf than the good turf. Personally, I just didn't think he had the same, kick, but I also understand he hasn't really had a convincing victory either. But I like that Pratt's aboard again. He's ran against some of these before. I know Carson's Run got him last time, but I like that he'll have the jump. And I'm curious what you guys like about El Razine, because this is one I've faded a lot. And admittedly, the last 2 times it hasn't worked out for me, but I just think it's a big step up.
I mean, Pat, we can talk about it. This is a big step up. I don't disagree, but he's been very, very good, at least his last 2 times. It almost just seems like he's been able to put it together. I guess you can kind of take it where Dylan Davis is hopping off and actually running in Carson's Run, which could be a negative for some people. But I mean, look, it's Irad taking the mount here. Seems to just put it together, and he always does better running these longer distances. My only concern is maybe he is just a Saratoga special. Shout out Paul Haller.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think since he's added the blinkers,
Yeah,
he did graduate at fourth asking and he was going, 12 furlongs, breaking his maiden. I just, then he follows up with that was a very impressive. I know we got the right trip, but that was an impressive win um, last out with that 92. I
I agree.
just think his last two races have been very good. And with those additions of blinkers, this English Channel coat is just getting better. And I think I kind of want a new face in this spot. And, we've been, Carson's run, we'll talk about him, but he's great. Don't get me wrong, but he's been sitting in that, higher 80 buyers. I would like to try and beat Carson's run in this spot because I'm sure they have bigger aspirations, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, this is one horse that I thought is. I mean, he's been very interesting. Definitely, at least in the Saratoga Derby Invitational, I actually ended up liking him in this spot after being in the same spot where I just couldn't trust Legend of Time again. But either way, that Nashville Derby, he still ran. I mean, he came from way far back in that race, and he was still able to almost win. But Bellum Justum ran an absolute good race, a banger race with a really good trip. So the Nashville Derby doesn't necessarily take too much out of Carson's run in my mind. I think he's really good. But as you pointed out, Patrick, I think they kind of just figured it out with El Razine. Puts the blinkers on, has been absolutely lights out these last two. As Charlie pointed out, it is a bigger step up. I mean, he's coming from, he graduated, like you said, fifth asking. Then he went to an N1X and actually blew the doors off that field. Now stepping up here where he might not get too much pace to run into, but I'm hoping he gets the same type of trip as he did in that maiden race. And maybe he isn't good enough, but at least based on numbers alone, he shows to be if just as good, if not better, based off that 92 last time out. So he should get pretty clear run, smaller field. So no, don't really have any problems with his trip. As I showed the time for him there, they show Legend of Time sitting just off the number 4, who's Yo Daddy in this race, which every time I think Legend of Time is going to get this trip, he always seems up being a little bit farther back. But this is a race where there's no one really that wants to go for the lead just straight up. Yo Daddy's been better with the target. I actually like him better on dirt than I do on the
Yo Daddy's a quality dirt horse.
Yeah, which I don't, I mean, look, ran second in the Saranac behind a really good horse in West Hollywood. So and Linda Rice obviously knows where to spot her horses really well. But I actually like him better on the dirt. Back-to-back 90s, hasn't run anything over 79 on the turf. Maybe it's just for that extra distance. Linda Rice wants to try him in this spot. But if Legend of Time does sit off of Yo Daddy in this race, Legend of Time is definitely the most likely winner. But I can't trust this horse who's definitely going to be favored again. And with Pratt, Appleby, I just can't be willing to take him at a low price. At least in my eyes, when you have other horses that, maybe third choice Elrazine might have just what it takes to be putting it together at this time of the year. The only other horse I want to talk about, and then we'll move on, Charlie, is Deterministic. This is a horse that I was very high on. Coming out of that Gotham win, he looked fantastic. Then absolutely ran nowhere in the Wood Memorial, ran nowhere in the Peter Pan. Then turf has been good to him, but he kind of just really hasn't, pushed over the edge. He's kind of running mid 80s, ran an 82 in the Virginia Derby while still winning, but at even money. It's just one that doesn't seem, maybe it's just a step below some of these in this spot.
Yeah, I just had this one somewhere in the mix. I'm a little surprised with the projector because I kind of thought that, I mean, I know I like to make my jokes about Joel Rosario, but I think kind of the angle they have to take, and I kind of like with them cutting this horse back last time to 1 1/8 is I think Deterministic is going to have to show some more speed in a race where there really isn't. I think the reality, which is what we kind of visually got to see two back against Carson's run and Legend of Time, is I don't think Deterministic has the same late kick, obviously, as Carson's run, so he can't afford to be, sitting right next to it as the projector shows. But I think realistically, Clement's going to kind of understand where he is, one that's going to be more of a true closer and Carson's run that can be back. I feel like he's going to have Deterministic go because if he wants any chance at both of his horses running well, this one has to. And so that was kind of my angle of having this one in the mix. Is I just could see Deterministic honestly being the one who takes the initiative to either set the pace or at least sit right behind Yo Daddy and then maybe get the jump because I don't think this horse really has a method of victory if he's on level terms with Legend of Time or someone like Carson's run. So I just think this one is very much going to come down to the trip. I think if deterministic goes, could be interesting. I think if deterministic sits, the horse's race is pretty much over.
I think that's a very astute point, honestly, because, I talk about it all the time where, like, you have horses that are doing the similar trip, and which one are you going to choose? I don't want this horse closing. I don't want this horse running a similar trip to Carson's run, as you pointed out. So what's this horse's? I don't see a way that this horse can win unless he pulls out a different tactic, sits up on the lead, like you're kind of hinting at, Charlie, and just tries to run them off their feet. Otherwise, I like Carson's run more from a stalking position. I like Legend of Time from a sit-off position, and I like El Razine from a closing position. So I completely agree with you, but it's going to be interesting to see what deterministic does in this race for Christophe Clement. I think he's talented. I don't know if he just measures up to a horse like Carson's run, El Razine, or Legend of Time. But guys, we'll keep moving on here, and we'll move into the Belmont Turf Sprint, which is another doozy of a race. I'm going 6-3-7. Pat's also going 6-3-7. I actually just noticed that, and Charlie's going 7-3-5. Guys, moving on to that aforementioned Belmont Turf Sprint, and as I pull up the Equibase right now, give me 1 second, guys. Sorry, it's still being really laggy for me, but this is a field of 9 coming into this race, with the morning line favorite again all the way to the outside in the number 9. Nothing Better, the 7-year-old for Jorge Ruiz and Jorge Duarte Jr. at 3-1. Second choice to the inside of the number 2, Mischievous Angel. Irad picks up the mount for Jorge Abreu at 4-1. And the third choice is the number 5, Senbei, the New York bred from Manny Franco and Christophe Clement. And I'll switch over the picks right now, and you'll see this is a wide open one, guys, as we're going with 3 different horses. I'm going with the 5, Senbei. Pat's going with the number 9, Nothing Better, the favorite. And Charlie's going a little bit off the board with Outlaw Kid, the Ontario bred for Flavian Pratt and George Weaver. Pat, I'll let you go first, as you are chalking out in this race with the number 9, Nothing Better. But he's been very good. Definitely also as of late, even though he's 7 years old, he still seems to keep putting together good runs.
Yeah, exactly. Has shown no signs of slowing down. I just think that draws well outside here with the speed. I think if he can get out early and get a lead, even if the fractions are pretty quick, I think this horse will be tough to beat. This horse has just been ultra tough. I mean, you look at the last 4 races, you could look at if he's kind of dodged and weaved a couple, tougher fields maybe, but he's picked his spots well. And I think this is another spot where, he is the horse to beat. Obviously, it's a turf sprint, so we're all going to question, if you're trying and demand a price, as we like to usually do.
Yeah.
But I just think his gate to wire trips for the majority of his wins, coming into this campaign, I just think that he'll be the one to beat, and I'm not going to try and beat him in this spot.
Yeah, and you can see the 9. If the 9 gets that type of trip, he definitely could be tough to beat. Running off the 7, Determined Kingdom, who's not necessarily cheap speed, but he's definitely not up to par with some of these in here. As you can see, he's kind of running low 90s, but has been running, handicap in the Virginia bred, state bred race that last time out in the Van Cleef, lost to Witty and Dream Shake. So, stuff like that where he's kind of in that same boat as the 9, but I think the 9's just running better races, and the fact that, he tried in the Jaipur, in 23, but I think at 7, Jorge Duarte is just kind of noticing, he's got a really good horse in these listed type stakes that he can bounce around and really just cash checks. And especially these last 4 have been very good. We all have him somewhere. Pat's got him first. Charlie and I have him in second. Charlie, you're going with, again, a little bit off the beaten path with the number 3, Outlaw Kid. The one thing I will say is that pay attention to the entries come race day, because this horse is cross-entered at Woodbine on October 5th on this Saturday in the 9th race of Woodbine. But Charlie, if this horse comes here maybe a little slow, but has won at Aqueduct in the past, 3 for 3 in the money, definitely a horse that you have to take a look at.
Yeah, if this horse runs here and I get anywhere near 6-1, I'd be thrilled. I think because it's Pratt, there's no way. For me, I thought this was an interesting one. I know normally when we think sprint, we say 5 or 5.5, so at 6 it is a little longer. But if you look on paper, there isn't a whole lot of speed, and I just like this one a lot because I thought the effort, at this exact track and distance going 6 furlongs with Pratt was very impressive. I mean, this horse came flying against Big Invasion, who I thought had that race won and did it in a very solid time. And then, when you kind of think this horse is sort of a true closer where you're sort of wondering, is there, enough speed to win this race? Then last time out sits closer in a 5 furlong sprint where obviously there's going to be even more speed and sits, a couple lengths off and then just blows by that field easily. I think, again, I don't think I'll get anywhere near 6-1. I absolutely love Outlaw Kid in the spot. I also think it's very interesting that Pratt chose to hop on this horse and hop off the number 2 in this race, who, as you mentioned, is a bit of a shorter price and had a nice win last time out. I just think Pratt can kind of work out whatever trip he wants with this one. I think if they don't go that fast, we saw what that race last time, that Outlaw Kid can show enough speed and has some really impressive figures recently, but also, back in the day, but can press forward. And if they do go really fast, I think this is one where he can sit back with. So I just really think this is one who's versatile and not trip dependent at all. And I could just see the 9, kind of getting up there, but not quite as an older horse who has to stretch out a little bit, get it done, and would love 6-1. And then I'll briefly go into the 2, who's the horse that I know we all have somewhere in the mix. This is a horse who has burned me time and time again. I gave this one out in the Power Picks on June 7th. Did not go well. Looked like the horse had it. Came back again as a short price. Just didn't get it done, and then switches to a longer distance again and does. And I just always thought watching Mischievous Angel, this is one that always needed more distance. I just don't know if 6 furlongs is enough, because we always talk about at Kentucky Downs how, the distance you see is actually a lot longer. I just think this is the classic horse that's just going to burn your money and finish somewhere in the top 3.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one to finish in the money, but will get bet, take the IRAD tax out of it. Jorge Abreu has run very well at Aqueduct in the past, definitely earlier this year. So Mischievous Angels definitely want to at least keep in the mix if you're playing some type of exotic bet. But from a win end, he has won at 6 furlongs in the past, granted just getting up with Pratt aboard. Irad takes them out again, who had him at Kentucky Downs last time, winning for fun. So could be something where they try to keep him a little bit closer, but Mischievous Angel should be one that should be closing. Funny enough, Charlie, with your analysis on Outlaw Kid, that's kind of how I felt about Senbei. Senbei is one that can sit a little bit closer to both the 7 and the 9. Someone maybe like Mischievous Angel might not be able to catch based on, a trip pace scenario. I thought if Senbei sits close, just like he did 2 back, running the same configuration at Aqueduct, I think it's going to be definitely a little bit of a class up here for Senbei, but with that same type of trip in the race 2 back, I thought he could run very well. Gets Manny Franco back aboard here. Nothing against Jairo Rendon, of course, but Manny Franco knows this horse, has won on this horse before. 94 definitely fits in this spot. So if he can keep him a little bit closer to speed, that doesn't necessarily look like it's going to develop too much. I think Senbei is definitely one to take a look at, especially at a price of 5-1. And later, obviously the next race we'll talk about, there's a big scratch, but later in the card, I think it could get a little bit chalky. So Senbei to touch off at 5-1, I think is one that people need to at least take a look at before moving to others. Pat, you have this horse in 3rd. Any final thoughts you want to move on before we move on to the now wide open Frizette?
Yeah, no, the only thing I like Senbei. The only thing that kind of made me question was the race on July 6th. That turf was really firm.
Yeah.
And I think the horse really prefers the firm turf. I'm not sure how firm it's going to be on Saturday, but listen, maybe the stake spot's a little bit ambitious on paper, but he seems to be doing really well, so why not?
Yeah, and obviously Clement knows to spot his horses. Horses sold for 280. So Reeves Thoroughbred Racing, they know all about winning these spots. So Senbei is worth at least a look for me at 5-1. Guys, we'll move on to the Frizette here as we keep chugging along here on Aqueduct Saturday. I'm going 5-9-2. Pat's going 9-2-5. Charlie's going 3-9-2. Guys, this is the race that I kind of mentioned earlier. The number 8 in this race, who I thought was probably the most likely winner on the entire day, Senza Parole, and I'll show her PPs right now. Senza Parole will be out, and will be out for the entire year per Chad Brown earlier today. So after that absolute blowaway performance at Saratoga, Senza Parole will hang it up to run. Hopefully, I think Chad in the article said January or February would be a target date for Senza Parole. So unfortunate that we don't get to see her on Saturday, but that leaves, and that leaves this race wide open. I mean, anyone obviously you'll see our picks. We're actually pretty similar, which is I thought was a little bit funny, but we do have 3 different winners in this race. So let's move on to the Frizette guys, which is of course race number 7, the middle of the pick 5. It's a field of 10 or a field of 9 now, excuse me, with Senza Parole out. And your morning line favorite goes all the way up to 6-1, and it's all the way to the inside. Snow White for Joel Rosario and Danny Gargan. Without the scratch, the second choice is the Queen's MG for Dylan Davis, Safi Joseph, and then third choice is shared with a bunch of horses. And I'll show our picks right now on the screen. Pat's going with the quote unquote now morning line favorite, Snow White. Charlie's going with the number 10, Icona Mama, the Pennsylvania bred. Carmouche hops aboard at 15-1. I'm going with Pondering for Pratt, Walsh, and Godolphin at 12-1. Pat, I'll let you go first. Snow White last time, technically still a maiden coming into this race, but that last race was very good, just did end up getting caught down the lane.
Yeah, listen, Danny Gargan could not win anything at that Saratoga meet, and I thought, the way she ran, and how she just, you just like to see improvement throughout the race and stuff like that. And I thought she ran a very big race. Losing to a nice Tom Amos filly in that spot, who always points his horses to Saratoga and runs formidable there. So I just looked for this horse to take another step forward. I mean, it's obvious you see the bullet works and stuff like that, staying up in Saratoga and working and stuff like that. Gets the blinkers, which I think should help from the inside, and should show obviously early speed in here. So I don't know about you guys. My head was spinning when I heard that the 8 was scratching in here. You kind of just looked at this race. I know, with 2-year-olds, you kind of have to dig deep and stuff, but when you see a standout like this, it's tough because
I said it earlier. I thought she was the most likely winner, even in the entire day at Keeneland, anywhere. I thought, especially with all the speed that looked like in this race, she absolutely ranged up and blew that field away, of course, by flying colors. This would be a different, type of ask, but man, she looked so impressive in that race. And of course, we're not going to drown on her too much because she's not in the damn race. So, which is really unfortunate. But Charlie, you have her in second, I have her second. Snow White makes a whole ton of sense, but Time Form does say a fast pace. Obviously, the 8's out, but the Queen's MG's not slow. She showed she wants to be up on the lead in the past. And the 5, Scottish Lassie, who went close to the lead last time out for Jose Abreu. There could be speed in here, and you're hoping with that, with, of course, your top pick, the number 10 as well.
Oh, I think there will be speed. I think there's going to be a ton of it. I'm not really sure who wants to sit. I was actually part of the reason I thought the 8 was arguably, like you said, the most likely winner. I mean, look, besides the fact that it was a horse I actually had covered on the power picks and thought looked a little dangerous with the gun runner on debut. I didn't know that dangerous, obviously, at the time, but I just thought the 8 would sit a stalking trip. Now, admittedly, I think Icona Mama's going to sit, more of a closing trip than a stalking trip, but I could see this race being kind of similar to what we saw at the Pocahontas, where it's a bunch of horses that are stretching out that in the past were pretty damn forwardly placed and show a lot of early speed and not much closing speed. And this is one who, look, won on debut, then ran a very solid second, beating Vigidal, who's a horse that we've all liked before, ran second to Kimchi Cat, who was the favorite that we all liked in the Pocahontas, which obviously didn't work out, but ran a really nice third and closed up at 30-1. Mm-hmm. I just think this is one who could pick up the pieces and take advantage and get a perfect pace setup. And for me, in a race where I think, again, the most likely winner is now gone and it's a wide open race, I want a price in this spot. I think I completely see why you have the 1 in second, as I do as well. I see why Pat is the 1 in first. I think that horse realistically is likely the one to beat. But if I'm picking between a 6-1 horse that'll probably be closer to 5-2, 3-1 in a speed race versus a horse that I'm guessing I'll probably get 8-10-1 on, that should be able to pick up the pieces and also has that exposure already to running a big race like the Pocahontas, I think Icona Mama is very interesting in this spot.
Obviously, I do too. I have the horse in third. I was between a bunch of different horses. I'm glad, Dave, Racing Down, when you put that in the chase. Another cliche is a horse I'm going to talk about in a second, because that's the other horse I was bouncing around in between my picks. Look, these 2-year-old races, especially this race now, is super hard. You got to do a lot of digging. Of course, I'll have my final picks up on AP Roscoe K on X on Saturday. So feel free to follow me over there if you want my final picks. But Icona Mama, Charlie, I agree. I mean, if there's anyone to pick up the pieces, she sure looks like the one to do it with all this speed in this race. Icona Mom is the only one that's kind of past horses. Last time out at, she's been disrespected 29-1, 30-1, has ranged up in the money both times. And I don't have her first, but I think she's definitely the one to at least include underneath in your exotics at a high single digit odds come Saturday. But I went with the number 3, Pondering. And last time out in the spin away, really just didn't work out. Was in between. I think she was way farther back than she wanted to be. Just never got her footing in the slop. Almost just seems like a complete throwaway race to me. Come Saturday, it's going to be good weather. I don't necessarily think it's the distance. Hard spun out of Street Sense mare. See, Street Sense, she was running 7.5 furlongs. Obviously, this is a 1-turn mile, but I don't think the distance is going to be any issue. I like that she didn't necessarily pass horses the time at Ellis, but she was able to at least sit back and rate. She wasn't an absolute speedball like some of these horses are in here. I just think with Pratt aboard, she's going to get a good trip. The question is, of course, is she's going to be good enough to run in this spot with a bunch of horses. But I think the Spinaway was definitely a tough race this year. Now, coming back into this race in the Frizette, I think it's a little bit of an easier spot. Definitely not much easier, but somewhat easier. Should get a cleaner trip from here out of the mud. I think Pondering's definitely interesting in this race, and she'll be more like 6-1. Obviously, these odds are all going to completely blow up. These morning lines mean absolutely nothing at this point, unfortunately. Another cliche is the last horse I want to talk about, and obviously I'll throw it to you guys if you guys want to talk about anyone else, Pat, including Pat. I'll throw it to you first, of course, with Paradise City. But another cliche was a horse that was in a restricted race, for horses that sold for less, I believe, than 50,000, I believe, was that race. Mm-hmm. And absolutely blew the doors off that field. Granted, I don't think she's going to get nearly as easy of a trip this time, but Dave pointed out at 20-1, this could be a horse that volatiles have run super good. Tappet mare, this horse going to want to run for forever. Gary Contessa, 0-4 so far, but has obviously gotten in the winner's circle over 10% of the time this year. Another cliche is definitely one I would want to include as a long shot. If you're playing some type of horizontal bet, I wouldn't want to throw her out completely. The other horse is Paradise City, Patrick, and this is a horse, of course, that ran in the fall at Gulfstream Park, as a lot of us know. Obviously, the time not the best time for those horses competition wise, but ran with another Ramsey horse, another Safi trained horse, and Hope with Pope. Was very game all the way down the stretch. Was able to wear down, got a decent number. Now comes to this spot is again one of the only horses that's realistically rated and passed anybody.
Yeah, and I mean, this horse is bred to go longer, by Mackenzie. This filly's by Mackenzie. So I think the distance should be no issue at all. And like you guys, looking to find a price now after this big scratch. I think Paradise City should take another step here. And hopefully the way Safi's going these days can improve. And I'm hoping to get a nice price.
Yeah, and C2 Racing Stable, of course, the owners of White Barrio, they know how to get in the winner's circle. Manny Franco picks up the mount here. It's 47-2 last time out at Palm Meadows. Paradise City is another one. Again, it's just so many horses now you can make a case for winning this race, but Paradise City is the other one I thought about as well. Just thought, obviously, competition-wise might be a little bit below what a lot of these horses have already faced. But I like that she went 6.5 first time out. Now gets the 1-turn mile. And again, she's the only horses that's rated. Very tough to kind of decipher the pace scenario in this one, but I think Paradise City is definitely one to take a look at as well. I'm going 3-1-10 in the Frizette. Pat's going 1-6-3. Charlie's going 10-1-3. Crypto Light, my friend, of course, coming over from Equine Edge. Crypto Light, thanks so much, man, for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. And Racing Downwind does say you guys already confirmed it to me, but it is that 50K. Guys, let's move on to the other grade 1 on the card. Is the grade 1 Champagne, going another, basically just the same exact race for the boys. $500,000 on the line, going the 1-turn mile at Aqueduct. And as I bring up the field right now, there's a big favorite, one that we all loved last time, given out on the power picks. Absolutely hammered the number 10, Chancellor McPatrick, Flavian Pratt, Chad Brown. Now 6-5. It's a little different from that 4-1 last time out, guys. I'll tell you that much, but definitely deserves to be 6-5 in this spot, at least in my opinion. Second choice, horses I'm also very interested in, and was very interested out of the maiden race. Tip Top Thomas, Irad takes the mount for Pletcher at 7-2, and third choice, the number 5, Uncaged. And I'll bring up our picks right now. And again, we don't see each other's picks beforehand. I see them before the show, obviously, because I have to put them in. But Patrick and Charlie have no idea who each other's picks, and we're all going with the same top 3. Looks like a pretty decent 3-horse race in here. Vacoma Rides is the only other one that's below double-digit odds, and I think he might be a little bit just below these 3. But Charlie and I are both going with Chancellor McPatrick. Patrick, you are not going with Chancellor McPatrick. Patrick, you are going with the number 2, Tip Top Thomas. And I'm very interested to see, because I think there's one overlooming thing above Tip Top Thomas in here, and it could be the pace scenario.
Yeah. And the one thing, a little pushback with the pace.
Yeah, please.
Aqueduct has been very favorable to speed. It's been a very speed favoring track so far. Since they've switched back to downstate. Not saying it's going to hold up, and I don't want to say that I'm banking on that. Tip Top Thomas was ultra impressive on debut, running in what looks to be a typical maiden loaded maiden race at Saratoga, winning very impressively, which I believe was or it might have been the week before, actually, the what's it called, the Travers weekend.
Yeah.
But listen, like I said, this horse just, should love the distance even more. Just like Chancellor McPatrick, I'm sure. The horse that ran second, Rookie Card, did come back to finish second and did have a decent buyer in that spot. I just think with Irad sticking aboard here, he had a choice for another horse with very good connections. I think just the respect here and the way this horse is working, I'm willing to take a shot at a little bit of as the alternative to Chancellor McPatrick, who rightfully so everybody's on, and I mean, who is ultra impressive, who I do have a little bit against, because that horse did nail me at the wire in his maiden debut, beating T Craft at a good 17-1. So I was a little upset about that.
Yeah, they got you back not at 17-1 necessarily, but 4.5-1.
Yeah, it made some money back.
Hopeful, but Charlie, I'll go ahead and show the hopeful here. And Ferocious is a horse that Howard and I talked about yesterday. Howard, Paul, and I talked about yesterday. Keeneland running this weekend on Fall Star Saturday. Looks very, very good in that race. But, man, Chancellor McPatrick in this race, Charlie, on a track that necessarily wasn't too favoring to these types of closers, especially late in the meet at Saratoga. This was just a very good run, man, and he deserves to be 6-5 in this spot with a ton of speed in this race. He looks to have everything his way if he can all put it together on Saturday.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me. Not that it was creative, but I was on Ferocious that day. I thought the horse ran huge. I think it was just a lot of speed and a tough duel to stick with, and kind of sort of faded out of it. And I thought Chance McPatrick was just going to go right on by and kind of blow his field away. But then, I mean, credit to Ferocious, see kind of lugging out there, re-rallying. But at the same time, I mean, look at all the dirt in the face for a young horse with not a lot of experience. Only second time out for Chance McPatrick to get it done. And yeah, there was a bit of a setup, but horse still had to go wide the whole time, still had to cover a bunch of ground and take a bunch of dirt in the face, and ended up on paper looking like a tourist race, and that's what it came down to. And I think those are the two most talented horses in the division. And as long as Ferocious isn't in this race and the horse isn't, I feel like you said, there's a reason. Obviously now with the scratch in the race before, Chancellor McPatrick is now the most likely winner in the card. Horse ran huge last time out, ran huge on debut in both races, didn't have it too easy. Yes, the pace was, but still had work to do. And, I remember, I think Chad Brown even said that this is a horse they've been planning on getting to a mile, getting more distance to. It was just a matter of time. And now the horse gets it. I feel like, everything kind of sets up perfect for this one to take another step forward and just keep building on what's been a promising early career.
And the nice thing is that if you like Ferocious and the Keeneland race, this race goes off before that race. So depending on how Chancellor McPatrick runs in this one, might be able to take a bigger shot with Ferocious. They're going to be about the same price in both those races. But look, he's very talented. He's going to be a short price, nothing creative. Racing Downwind does back up your point, Patrick, that it's been speed favoring and inside favoring, which obviously goes against both of what Chancellor McPatrick's going to have here.
Maybe we want him to lose just because what we could do.
Yeah, sure, maybe. But either way, Tip Top Thomas, like I said, he was very game last time, ran against a very good horse and rookie card, at least going forward. But I mean, JJ Zozo's going to go. Lethal Speed's a closer, but Mo Plex is going to want to go. Smoking Wicked's going to want to go. Colonel Bob wasn't far behind. Executive Order wasn't far behind. It just seems like there's so much speed in this race. Should set up completely for Chancellor McPatrick. And if he's as good as people think he is, he should have everything his way in this race and should win a pretty good race at 6-5. I'm going to probably play an Insanity Exacta where it's Tip Top Thomas over Chancellor McPatrick, because if that comes in, I definitely want to get paid as well. But at least from an exotic standpoint, Chancellor McPatrick looks to be my key, at least on top over some exactas in this race, as you'll see when we get to best bets. But there's some others in here. The only other ones we're going to talk about is Uncaged. And this is the other horse that I'm very interested in this spot, just from the sole fact that he's going to get a jump on a horse like Chancellor McPatrick. Charlie, I'll let you, and then Pat, you can touch on him as well. This is a horse last time out that came from just a nice stalking position, got a nice trip, going 6, but Curlin, Pioneer, the Nile mare, this horse should also love the extra distance given to him in this spot. And if he gets a jump on a horse like Chancellor McPatrick, I would not be surprised at all if this horse ends up winning this race.
Yeah, I think what will kind of help Patrick's pick, but also simultaneously help the 5, is with them both being the 2 Pletchers and being 2 of the faster horses in this field, given that they ran in obviously, 6 furlong sprints compared to some of these who've been running further. I don't see any way where the 5 sends with the 2. I think the 2 kind of goes for the lead in battles with the 4. But like you touched on, I think the question for the 5 is if Joel can just do what he normally does that can frustrate me at times, which is be super patient. I think these are the kind of races, though, where his style does work towards his favor. Because I think if Uncaged just sits patiently off the speed, but naturally has enough speed, which the horse will, as you said, also will relish the distance, be faster than Chancellor McPatrick. I think strictly from a trip perspective, nobody on paper should get it better than Uncaged. I just think the question is going to be, does the horse have enough at this stage early in his career to get the distance right now? Or does Chancellor McPatrick have it better and is just able to catch up in time? Or could Patrick be right and maybe with the inside speed favoring the 2 gets loose? But I think the 5 is really the wild card and is the one out of, the 3 horses we've talked about that you'll by far get the most square price on. And I think is kind of the safest bet to have at the very least a good result out of the 3, because if there is enough pace, Chancellor McPatrick's going to have a lot of work to do. If it's a hot pace, the 2 could fade badly. I feel like the 5 is the one who kind of is, the safest bet, but at the same time, maybe just hasn't quite had as maybe more under the radar, I guess, performance, because the horse didn't run against a bad field. I just think, when that 2 ran against rookie card, that race was very hyped up. And then obviously Chancellor McPatrick's been hyped up a ton, but I thought Uncaged looked very professional.
Yeah, and you can see in that last race, too, that race held together pretty well.
For sure,
I mean, Cyclone State ran a 59, but everyone else has been, high 60s, low 70s. Even Classis ran an 82, running third to Prater, who's a very nice, well-meant horse, and that horse is for St. Elias stable and Todd Pletcher as well. So definitely out of a pretty decent maiden race for Uncaged. Did pass that test with flying colors and should look to get a pretty good trip in here as an alternative to 2 pretty big favorites in this race. I'm going 10-5-2. Pat's going 2-10-5. Charlie's going 10-2-5. Before we move on to the last race, guys, which of course is the only non-stake of the card, please go down below the video player here on YouTube. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We would greatly appreciate it. As again, not only does it show us that you guys are enjoying the content, but it pushes this video out into YouTube to hopefully bring like-minded horse players like yourself to the HHH Racing Podcast. Also, I mentioned it earlier, but I want to mention it one more time now that we have more people in here. Bettin and Boozin to kind of leave the way for Pacific horse players. I feel like we felt like it would be a lot easier if we just had one show, one night a week, rather than having, two shows every Wednesday night for you guys to watch. So Bettin and Boozin will be moving to Tuesday every single week from next week onward at our regular time at 8 p.m. Eastern, but now Tuesday nights. So please come join us on Tuesday night next week to cover some place that's going to at least have PPs come out early. Shout out to Naira and West Coast for not having PPs out early as usual, but hopefully we'll get to cover Keeneland or something like that, which will be fantastic as I will be there next weekend. But guys, we'll move on to race number 9 here. It's an optional claimer, 50,000 at a mile and a 16th on the turf. And not to be outdone, this race is also another very big field. 12 horses, 3 also eligibles, 1 MTO, but it still does have a pretty big morning line favorite in the number 3 transactional Flavian Pratt, Chad Brown at 2-1. The second choice is to the 4 Funny Uncle, Manny Franco, Mike Maker at 9-2. Number 5 Palace View rounds out the top 3. Dylan Davis for Mark Cassie at 6-1. And guys, I'll bring up the our picks for this last race here. And again, both Charlie and I are going with the number 3 transactional. Pat's going with the number 5 Palace View. And it seems like, in a contrary to a lot of these races today, this race has not a whole lot of speed for once on this card. Pat, you're going with the number 5 Palace View, a horse that I'm interested in as well. I have in third. It was between Funny Uncle and Palace View for me for that second asking. But what'd you like most about the number 5? I'll show the time form first, which has both our top pick and your top pick sitting right behind what looks like lone speed on paper.
Yeah, listen, this is a tough spot. The 3 transactional, I can't get past that last race and the field that the horse faced and just could barely get by. So I fell for Palace View, who, listen, I've been completely against. We've covered this horse a couple times, where I know a lot of us have liked the horse in the spot and just didn't really have an excuse. The last time it did win, had a great trip. But what I'm going to say here is I think if this horse can get back to running, what it has in the past and what it ran on, it did run on synthetic. This is a decent horse. I look for Dylan Davis to sit like the time form shows, right off the pace, kind of be more forwardly placed. Does go from that sprint to route, which I think will be a little bit better but listen, this is one of those kind of put up or shut up spots, because if this horse doesn't win in this spot, not sure, where you go from here.
Yeah, and this looks like you kind of mentioned, Pat. This is a horse that a lot of us have been on, but the thing that I like that they're doing back, they tried 6 furlongs last time, which I didn't like the move, and obviously it didn't work out too well. Now she comes back to a mile and a 16th, excuse me, I'll take a drink for that. It's fine. It's usual. Bettin and Boozin, we're back. Hallelujah. But either way, she runs. I said it again. God damn it. He runs back at this distance where he's been good in the past. 82, 80, 80. That fits well in this spot. So I definitely think he's at least good for at least an in the money shot, let alone on the win end. But Pat, we'll get to your best bets later, where you believe in this horse has a very good chance to win. Transactional Charlie, this is a horse that's been very good, at least numbers wise. Last time out, did have an easier spot with a good trip, but was closer to a hot pace, much hotter, I think, than what's going to be in this spot. If he can just sit either right off the lead or just sit the pocket with Flavian Pratt, kind of chalking out, nothing too creative in here, but I think he should win this race. If he gets the trip, I think he will.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hate these odds. I'll be honest. I think 2-1 in a race like this, I don't trust anybody in this race at all. I thought, kind of looking into this card before we knew the 8 scratched, it was honestly a pretty easy pick 5 in a handicap. You just go pretty narrow in 2 singles and then spread like crazy in this race. And now we have 2 spread races and the mandatory pick 5, which makes it tougher. Look, transactional is kind of one of those, like you said, not just the buyers are solid, but also, has always ran in good fields and is obviously, except for last time, was a bit of a drop, and always sort of ends up in a, working out a great trip and gets Pratt aboard again, which is a great thing. And, I know RDW, I think, mentioned in the chat also, this is third off a massive, near 2-year layoff. So this is kind of, I think, priming this horse to take another step forward as well. I just think it's a tough field because it's a lot of horses where you kind of just see, it almost feels like they're accidentally win. Like nobody in this field really wants or is trying to win. Someone's just going to have to win. And I just feel like transactional will make it happen. I mean, admittedly, I had a nice double played into this horse, and I didn't think when I watched it live that the horse got it done. I thought it was a Brigade Commander, the third horse that switched. I thought that horse had won in live action, but I was very pleasantly surprised to see I got it home. But I just think it's an open field. I think the 5 is interesting for sure that Pat touched on. That was one I was thinking about putting in somewhere. I just didn't want to go, with the 3 shortest prices in a race that's wide open. And I also just feel like Not that the 5-3's been perfect by any means, but I do feel like it is a horse that kind of, the last time that the 5 ran at this distance had every chance to win and somehow couldn't do it. But I feel like that is the case for a lot of these. Going into the 4, and I'll let you add on, Kyle, because I know we have the same top 2. I thought the effort was very impressive. I mean, they were literally visually, it wasn't just blue figures. They were walking on the lead. And
51.
Funny Uncle to find a way to close and look that convincingly good and have that much kick in a race with absolutely no pace is ridiculous. I mean, I'll tell you right now, if these were the odds from a betting perspective, I don't think you'll get 9-2 with Flying P Stables and Michael Maker in races like these where he thrives. I think this horse will end up going off second choice at, maybe 4-1 at most. But if I were able to get 9-2, I'd rather honestly play this one. I just think Funny Uncle, I know there isn't a lot of pace, but I think can sit closer if needed. And I just think to have that much kick in a race that was that slow, I don't think they could possibly go that slow again. So I just think this one's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. And I like that, like you said, kind of visually how he had to close into that pace last time. I like that he's a 4-year-old. He has run a lot, 23 times at 4 years old, but that last time was the first time on turf, and he showed a kick that he hadn't shown really in a while on dirt. That, the 80,000 claimer non-winners of two back was good. So where he did sit a little bit closer into a cold pace, Charlie. So I think that's kind of the pace, the trip you hope to envision for Funny Uncle, especially if you like him. But I agree with racing downwind. I'll touch on that comment in a second. There's only one other horse I want to talk about here, guys, and it's number 12. Pat, I'll throw it to you. Charlie, you can add on anything you want. This is the other maker in this race. But that last race was very good. Still was able to sit close off of a hot pace, a little bit something that he hasn't shown before, and now comes into this spot where paired to, 78, 77, 77, hopefully could take a little bit step forward in this one and off a little bit of a turn back from 3 turns to 2 turns.
Yeah, and actually he's faced some, nice allowance horses. Obviously we look 2 back. We know what happened that day on the 27th of July. Yeah, I mean, listen, this horse was favored last time out. I thought, ran decent, coming on late, but, he's going to have to do that again. Like, Kyle, you've hit on with the pace situation in here. Maker's always interesting in these spots. He picks, obviously, his horses pretty well and where he places them in here. So listen, at a price, I'm trying to beat the 3. So, this horse will definitely be on my pick 4s and pick 5 tickets that I play in here. But listen, Charlie, I'm not sure if there's anything else you have to say about the 12, but I think at a decent price is a little bit interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I just think this is one that has constantly been, sort of getting set up, but also simultaneously having to deal with hot paces, because I think this is one that Maker's trying to sort of teach to sit a little bit closer. And I think, honestly, I know the horse didn't win as the favorite, but I think maybe it was just a little too long and just couldn't quite get it done. But I like the spot. I like the prices. You touched on it. I did a little bit earlier with the other Maker. I just think these are the kinds of races that he thrives in and that he kind of is able to, especially do well with more under the radar horses, the one that isn't the favorite, but where you kind of look back and, I know we talk about in those big races, like, oh, it was the other Chad Brown, but I feel like sometimes as great of a trainer as Michael Maker is, the races that are kind of, not as glitzy, glammy races that you want to watch or cover like these, where we just cover all those grade 1s. I feel like these are the kinds of races you watch where it's just like, oh, well, of course Michael Maker won. Like, these are the races he excels in. And I think especially, like, racing down Windset and like Kyle's about to touch on, I think if you are going to try to beat the 3, you'd be crazy not to use both makers in this spot.
Yeah, I feel like, and like I said, racing downwind brought up a really good point. In this race where, there's one horse that's going to be so low odds compared to everybody else.
Right.
Really, it's either you take the single, you go skinny in this race, you try to, you go deep in the Frizette or something like that, or you spread in this race, go skinny other places and just hope the 3 doesn't end up winning, because no matter what, you're going to get a good price on everybody else in this race who's not transactional. So I think racing downwind brings up a really good point from a horizontal betting standpoint, where it doesn't make sense to necessarily throw him in there if he's going to be 7-5. And if he wins, you're just kind of throwing money out the window. Either if he does win, you can play different tickets, right? Where you play your main ticket where you're spreading in this race, or you're singling him in this race, and on the backup ticket, you can go skinny other places and spread in this race just in case to kind of cover that way. But I think that's a very good point. But also, I want to bring up a good fun thing from Jim Pillars, who actually joined up the chat after not being able to be here for a couple Wednesdays. So Jim, shout out to you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining the show. And Lori29, thank you for the show. Thanks, Lori, for joining the show. Greatly appreciated. New face here. Always like to shout out the new faces. I'm going 3-4-5. Pat's going 5-3-12. Charlie's going 3-4-12. Again, thank you guys all for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. Pat, I'll go to your best bets first. You are going with a race number 5, a win on the number 6, El Razine, and race number 9 on what we just talked about, a win on number 5, Palace View.
Yeah, hit on both horses, obviously. El Razine, kind of the new face, in that division, stepping up, from the allowance after breaking his maiden, at fourth asking, I think is, Pletcher has this horse ready to go for this stakes debut. And then Palace View kind of put up a shut up time like we talked about before. In this spot, I'm trying to be transactional. The horse didn't really show me much. I get the idea of, third off the bench, should run its best race. But I'm not sure how good that horse, really is. So I'll try and take a shot with a price in that spot. But, I'll just tell you, great card. I'm excited. It's fun Saturday. We kind of have the appetizer of what's to come, at Keeneland. So I think it's going to be a really fun Saturday.
It'll be absolutely a fun Saturday. But this and all these Breeders' Cup preps that are really getting into swing now before we get into Breeders' Cup time, which is under a month away, guys, which is absolutely insane. But Pat, good luck with your best bets. Charlie, going to you, and you're going the opposite way of Pat. Pat's taking 2 horses. You're going a little bit double and exacta. You're going race 5, a double 3-7 into the 3 single in race number 6. And that is, of course, Carson's Run and Legend of Time into the number 3 Outlaw Kid, who you mentioned at 6-1, who you really like. And in race number 8 in exacta, Chancellor McPatrick over Tip Top Thomas and Uncaged.
Yeah, so starting with the first one, I mean, again, I know it's a small field and it's going to be short prices, but I do really think Legend of Time should get it done. Otherwise, I'm just banking sort of in this race on, respectfully, you guys not being right with Razine, being able to take the step up and just going with the class of the field, getting the job done. And then, I know it's obviously not normally ideal to take 2 short prices in a small field, but what better race to play it into than a turf sprint where it is going to be wide open and I should get a price. Now, I do, again, as you touched on, Kyle, and for the people watching, make sure to check in with that next race to make sure Outlaw Kid doesn't scratch into the race at Woodbine, I believe you said is where the horse could be running. But
Yep.
Look, I love Outlaw Kid. It's one of, I'd say, out of my best bets I've been most excited about. I normally don't like turf sprints, but I like that it's a little longer. And if you're giving me, again, I don't think you'd get it. But if I'm getting 6-1 on a Pratt horse that is versatile and I really think could work out pretty much any trip and still find a way to win, I love it. And then, we talked about it with the 8 scratching. Chancellor McPatrick is the most likely winner in the card. And then my angle with that exacta is just, if they don't go as fast as we anticipate, I'm just hoping that Chancellor McPatrick can, get it done anyway and close down on that too. And if they do go fast enough, again, I think the 5 could work out a great trip. And I'm just banking on the distance and class of Chancellor McPatrick to sort of be able to get it done in any scenario, and then just sort of have the 2 most likely horses to finish in the money underneath to pay a decent exacta.
You'll see mine. I actually have a combination of both your best bets. So what's the point of me even being here? You already got it, Charlie. Of course, good luck with your best bets. There you go, guys. I have a win on the number 6, El Razine, in race number 5. I think it's 7-2 with the last 2 races where he's really figured it out. I feel like that's a very good horse to at least take a chance on. Is going to be third choice. And race number 8, I have a big exacta 10 over 2-5 with Chancellor McPatrick on top. And I mentioned that I want to have at least a little bit of insanity insurance if the number 5 Uncaged wins or Tip Top Thomas does get a better trip than I envisioned, because I was very high on him out of his maiden race. Just again, pace scenario wise, we'll see how it develops on Saturday. Big exacta 10 over 2-5 and a small insanity insurance exacta 2-5 over 10 King Chancellor McPatrick in second. But guys, look at that. 1 hour, guys. Quick and
Nailed
easy. But yeah, it's because we don't. You talk. You do. Everyone jokes about.
I was good today.
There's one person that's not
it.
here. There's one person that's not here though, and all of a sudden we go an hour. It's crazy how that works.
because he fires Charlie up. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's because he keeps.
Yeah, he'll wait for whatever pick that I have different to Patrick and be like, well, Patrick said this, but Charlie, you're feeling this way. Then I'll get all riled up and get going.
Either way. But guys, thank you guys all so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. back to the OGs with Patrick, Charlie, and of course myself. But again, if you guys weren't here at the start of the show, our new time will be Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So please come join us over Tuesday nights, the new home of Bettin and Boozin on the HHH Racing Podcast, where we'll cover everything from Kentucky to New York and all the way around, as we've always done here on Bettin and Boozin. But for my co-hosts, Patrick Kunsel and Charlie Freeman, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 102 of Bettin and Boozin, covering Frizette and Champagne Day over at Belmont at the Big A. And until next time, everybody, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.